Beloved chosen one. Pause for a moment. Yes. Right now, and listen closely. This is not random. This is not coincidence. Heaven has waited for this exact moment to whisper again the same voice that set you apart from the rest. You heard it long ago. That quiet, piercing nudge in your spirit that others ignored. You felt the pull to go right when the crowd rushed left, to be still when everyone else was moving fast, to trust when logic screamed otherwise. That whisper was not weakness, it was the sound of divine instruction marking your destiny. You did not realize it then, but obedience in that small moment caused a ripple in eternity. Angels took note. Heaven leaned closer. God saw that among 1,000 distracted hearts, yours was the one tuned to his frequency. While others scrolled past the message, you stopped. You listened. You said, "Yes, Lord." That is when heaven wrote your name beside the word faithful. There were moments you doubted if you even heard correctly. You wondered if you imagined it all. But each time you almost turned back, something holy anchored you. That something was not chance, it was the Spirit of God confirming your calling. You obeyed when it cost you comfort. You chose silence instead of self-defense. You prayed when it seemed pointless. And now, the one who called you is saying, "I am pleased." The world measures greatness by noise, but heaven measures it by obedience. You may not have seen the results yet, but every quiet act of surrender has been building a foundation of divine trust beneath your feet. You are standing now on sacred ground, ground paved by your own obedience. The time is coming when what was hidden will be revealed. Listen carefully. Obedience is not about perfection, it's about response. You responded when many ignored. You stayed when others ran. You forgave when it made no sense. That's why the Lord is drawing near to you now, to tell you that your obedience has spoken louder than any sermon you could have preached. You have been tested in small things, and now heaven is preparing to trust you with more. Your story is not like theirs because your ear is tuned differently. God has trained your spirit to recognize his tone, his pauses, his stillness. Others may need thunder, but you respond to whispers. That's what makes you chosen, not your talent, not your strength, but your response. You are not here by accident. Every delay, every detour, every moment you wanted to give up but didn't, it was all recorded. The angels assigned to your life are now gathering what belongs to you. The Lord says, "You obeyed when they didn't. You remained when they left. You trusted when they mocked. Now I will reward what they refused to sow." Feel that stirring in your heart right now. That's not emotion. That's the confirmation of heaven echoing through your soul. The season you are stepping into will not require you to chase doors. Doors will begin to chase you because obedience carries a fragrance that draws favor. The presence of God is resting on you in this very moment, not because you earned it, but because you responded when he called. And when you felt unseen, when no one celebrated your yes, remember, heaven was applauding in silence. The unseen stage of obedience always precedes public favor. The whisper that once separated you is now the sound of your next elevation. As the Spirit spoke through the prophet Jeremiah, chapter 17, verse 7, "But blessed is the one who trusts in the Lord, whose confidence is in him." Chosen one. This word is for you. If it finds your spirit burning, don't scroll away. Type 777 inches, the comments, as your prophetic act of agreement declaring that you hear his whisper, and you choose to keep obeying. Then like, share, and subscribe, not for attention, but as a declaration that you will not hide the voice of obedience that marked you. Heaven is watching. Even now, the Lord is turning his face toward you with a smile only heaven understands. The pain you endured in silence has become a song in the courts of angels. They are speaking your name in gratitude, for your obedience preserved light in dark places where many lost faith. You kept the flame alive. Do not underestimate what one obedient heart can shift in the earth. Your faith became a bridge others will walk across to reach salvation. Your quiet surrender has become a prophecy of endurance to generations that follow you. God is weaving your unseen sacrifices into the greater story of his redemption. And soon, the same whisper that called you will thunder through your destiny, revealing why the silence was necessary. What once looked like delay was divine preparation. The voice that set you apart will soon send you forth with power. Stand firm. Beloved, heaven has already written your reward. Chosen one. There was a time when obedience didn't shine. It wasn't glorious, loud, or seen. It was quiet, hidden in the corners of your everyday life. You obeyed not because the world applauded you, but because your heart couldn't ignore the whisper of heaven. That's the proof of a true servant faithfulness when no one is watching. In the silent season, you walked by faith, not by sight. You prayed without a sign, gave without recognition, and believed without confirmation. It wasn't that you didn't have doubts, it was that you refused to let your doubts speak louder than your conviction. When others demanded evidence before trusting, you obeyed with empty hands, knowing that unseen obedience holds more power than visible success. Every lonely night, every tear that fell when you felt forgotten, those moments were holy. The silence was not punishment, it was the sound of God working behind the veil. It is in silence that roots grow deep. You were being hidden not to be forgotten but to be preserved. The Lord covers what he values until the appointed time. You must understand this obedience is rarely comfortable. Sometimes it looks like loss. Sometimes it feels like exile. Sometimes it seems as though you've been buried under your own faithfulness. But burial and planting look the same from the outside. What the world called burial was actually sowing. You were not being buried to die, you were being planted to rise. Remember the still mornings when you woke up and felt nothing, when the voice of God seemed distant, and the heavens felt like brass, yet you still whispered, "I trust you." Those were the moments heaven recorded in golden ink, for in those unseen confessions, you proved your loyalty. You were being trained to hear God in the silence, not just in the storm. Heaven values consistency more than excitement. Many begin with passion but fade when the silence lingers. But you, chosen one, you stayed. You prayed even when the answer didn't come. You worshipped even when the song hurt. You believed even when nothing changed. That's why you carry a different fragrance now, the scent of endurance. The silent season is where prophets are formed, warriors are trained, and kings are refined. David's worship in the wilderness was the key that later unlocked his throne. Moses' years in obscurity prepared him for fire on the mountain. Your hidden obedience carries the same power. The greater the silence, the greater the destiny being shaped behind it. There were people who misread your quietness. They thought your stillness was weakness. They couldn't understand why you didn't fight for recognition, why you didn't demand attention, But God hid you because exposure too early would have destroyed what he was building inside you. Every delay was divine. Every not yet was mercy in disguise. And though it seemed like heaven was quiet, the truth is heaven was listening. Your sighs became intercession. Your stillness became worship. When you chose to wait instead of wander, you told God that his voice mattered more than results. You were proving to the unseen realm that obedience is not a reaction, it is a revelation of love. Many envy the harvest, but ignore the silence that comes before it. The soil of obedience feels lonely, but it is rich. It produces character, clarity, and communion with God that fame can never buy. You learned that God's presence is not always loud. It often whispers in the wind, walks in the shadows, and waits in the stillness. Chosen one, your hidden obedience is holy ground. Every step you took in faith when you could not see the outcome built a record in heaven. You didn't realize it. But while you were waiting, heaven was preparing. While you were silent, God was speaking your name in the council of eternity. Your obedience in secret became a declaration before the throne. The world celebrates results, but heaven celebrates obedience. And you, beloved, are now standing on the other side of your secret. Yes, the silence you endured has become a seed that will bloom publicly. The season of hiddenness was not wasted. It was sacred preparation. Heaven speaks clearly through the words in Deuteronomy. Chapter 28, verse 2, all these blessings shall come upon you and overtake you, if you obey the Lord your God. Those blessings are not just physical, they are spiritual, emotional, and eternal. They manifest as peace that cannot be shaken, strength that cannot be stolen, and joy that cannot be explained. You did not obey to earn blessings, but obedience naturally attracts the favor that flows from the heart of God. So, remember this truth: obedience in silence is the loudest sermon in heaven. The angels record it. The enemy fears it, and God honors it. Nothing you surrendered was lost. It was simply transferred into a realm where it can multiply. When you were silent, heaven spoke your name. When you waited, heaven moved on your behalf. You thought the silence meant absence, but it was actually alignment. You were being aligned with divine timing, so that what comes next would not just be a blessing, it would be a testimony. Hold this truth in your spirit: every obedient act carries eternal weight. Your unseen yes has already shifted atmospheres. You have proven that faith is not a feeling, it is a choice. And now, because you remained faithful in the silent season, heaven is ready to reveal what was hidden. Chosen one, there were moments when the mockery cut deep, when your obedience made you look strange, when your prayers were misunderstood, when your devotion felt like isolation. You didn't fit in because you were never designed to. While others compromised to be accepted, you stayed loyal to the whisper of God that separated you. You obeyed when it cost you the comfort of belonging. They laughed when you prayed over what they ignored. They questioned why you forgave people who hurt you, why you kept believing even when nothing changed. Some even said you were wasting your time. But heaven saw. Every insult was a seed of honor sown into the soil of your obedience. The very things they mocked became evidence of your consecration. The mockery wasn't personal, it was spiritual. Your obedience exposed the rebellion in their hearts. Your light irritated their darkness. The enemy used their words to try to make you doubt. But your spirit refused to bend. When they said, "You're too serious." God said, "That's exactly why I chose you." The ridicule was heaven's announcement that you were walking in the right direction. Chosen one. What they couldn't understand was that your obedience wasn't performance, it was worship. Every act of surrender was a love song heaven heard. While they spoke with sarcasm, heaven responded with applause. You may have walked away from people, but you never walked away from your purpose. You obeyed when it was unpopular, and that obedience is now building your crown. Many looked at your patience as weakness, but patience is the language of maturity. You didn't react when they provoked you because you had already been trained in silence. You knew that fighting back would only delay what God was doing. The restraint you showed in those moments became a sign of spiritual authority. The ones who mocked will one day recognize the peace that obedience built within you. You never needed to defend yourself, because heaven always defends the obedient. What you endured in laughter will return in favor. Every time you chose obedience over reputation, God added strength to your spirit. You were proving that faith isn't about applause, it's about alignment. Remember this when you are mocked for righteousness. You stand in the same lineage as Noah, Joseph, David, and even Christ himself. The faithful have always been misunderstood by those who live for approval. The mockery you faced was not a curse, it was confirmation that you are carrying something eternal. Chosen one. If only they knew what your obedience cost you, they would weep instead of laugh. Because behind every yes you gave God were sacrifices, no one saw silent tears, surrendered dreams, lonely nights. But heaven saw it all. Heaven measured it all. And heaven is about to return it all multiplied. When people mocked your passion, you didn't retaliate, you prayed. When they questioned your calling, you stayed quiet and trusted that time would reveal what obedience conceals. You let God speak for you. And now he is about to. Every voice that mocked you will soon witness the glory that obedience attracts. The prophet Elijah spoke as recorded in the first book of Kings, chapter 18, verse 21. How long will you waver between two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him. That same question echoes through your spirit now. You didn't waver, you followed. And heaven took note. You chose the path of the faithful when others chose the comfort of the crowd. That's why the blessing that's coming will not resemble theirs. Obedience sets you apart for divine manifestation. Beloved, mockery is the final test before manifestation. God allowed it not to break you but to prove you. If you can stay obedient while they laugh, you are ready to reign when he lifts you. Obedience under pressure builds a strength that no applause can produce. Now heaven is turning ridicule into recognition. Those who once mocked will soon honor what they once ridiculed. You will not need to explain yourself. Your fruit will speak. Your obedience will become your testimony, and your testimony will silence every doubter. So when you look back, don't curse the mockery, thank God for it. It taught you endurance. It kept you humble. It trained you to rely on the voice of God more than the voices of men. You are stronger because of what you endured. You are wiser because of what you withheld. Chosen one. Type "I stand firm" in the comments. Say it as a declaration, not a reaction. When you write those words, you're declaring that mockery didn't move you, rejection didn't ruin you, and doubt didn't define you. You stand firm in faith, knowing that obedience has already secured your victory. And as you stand, heaven stands with you. You are not the same as when they mocked you. The laughter of men has become the melody of angels. The same obedience they ridiculed is now your greatest reward. Stand firm. Beloved, the laughter has ended, and the revealing has begun. Chosen one, the world will never truly grasp the weight of the battles you've carried in silence. They saw your calm face, your steady walk, your quiet strength, but they never saw the storms behind your eyes, while others lived freely. Unaware, you were fighting invisible wars that demanded every ounce of your faith. You were not wrestling flesh and blood. You were standing between heaven and darkness, protecting something sacred inside you. You carried the weight of intercession, of unseen burdens, of prayers whispered through trembling lips at midnight. No one else could fight those battles because they were designed for you. Heaven trusted you with warfare others could not handle. You were chosen not only to shine in victory, but to endure the shadows of battle without breaking. Every tear you cried was a weapon. Every moment you refused to give up was a declaration in the spiritual realm that light still lives in you. You fought against exhaustion, doubt, temptation, fear, and even against the urge to quit believing. Those were not small skirmishes, they were holy wars fought in your soul. And though you felt weak, your obedience became your sword. There were seasons you felt surrounded, unable to explain the heaviness you carried. It wasn't depression, it was discernment. You were feeling the weight of spiritual resistance because your obedience was shaking foundations in unseen places. The closer you came to your breakthrough, the more intense the warfare became. The darkness around you knew that your persistence was fatal to its plans. Chosen one, the hidden battles reveal who you are when no one is watching. You didn't quit when it was quiet. You didn't retreat when no one noticed your fight. That's why heaven calls you a warrior clothed in obedience. You have scars. Yes, but those scars are sacred signatures of endurance. There were nights when you laid awake, feeling the pressure in your chest and the weight on your soul. You couldn't describe it, but you felt as if something was testing your faith to its limits. And in those moments, even when you said nothing, God heard everything. He heard the silent cries you couldn't form into words. He saw the way you lifted your heart toward Him when your voice failed. Heaven does not forget those who stand in the fire and refuse to let go of faith. Every unseen victory, every whispered prayer, every ounce of courage, it's all recorded. The invisible victories of your spirit are more valuable to God than visible trophies. While others look for applause, you earned heaven's respect through unseen endurance. When your spirit groaned and you couldn't explain your pain, the Holy Spirit Himself interceded for you. That's how closely heaven was involved in your battle. You were never alone. Even when you felt forgotten, angels surrounded you in the unseen, standing guard while you fought on your knees. The attacks didn't mean you were failing, they meant you were dangerous to the enemy's agenda. Beloved, never underestimate what your silent battles accomplished. Your endurance disrupted generational cycles. Your prayers protected people you'll never meet. Your persistence tore down plans that were forming against you. You were not only fighting for yourself, you were fighting for a lineage, for a purpose, for a testimony. There is a mystery about obedience in warfare. It doesn't always look like strength. Sometimes it looks like tears. Sometimes it looks like rest when you want to run. Sometimes it looks like surrender when pride wants control. But every act of trust you offered was warfare in disguise. Heaven calls that kind of endurance holy. The world honors the loud victories, but heaven honors the quiet ones, the moments you said, "I trust you," while your world shook. You have no idea how many demons fled when you whispered those words. You didn't need to see your power, you only needed to stay obedient. And heaven did the rest. We are reminded through the writings of David in the Psalms. Chapter 34, verse 19. Many are the afflictions of the righteous, but the Lord delivers him out of them all. This truth is your foundation. You were never promised a life without battles, you were promised victory through them. The warfare was not a sign of abandonment, it was a sign of assignment. The enemy only fights what threatens him. The intensity of your struggle reveals the magnitude of your purpose. So even as you breathe now, know this: every battle had meaning. Every wound carried wisdom. Every delay was divine protection. What tried to destroy you actually strengthened your discernment. You emerged from each fight with sharper vision and deeper faith. Chosen one. You may not realize it yet, but those hidden wars refined your spirit into a weapon of righteousness. You walk differently now. You pray with authority born from pain. You carry peace that intimidates darkness because it cannot comprehend why you're still standing. Your battles were not wasted, they were ordained. You are not broken, you are battle-forged. Every invisible fight was training for visible victory. And now, the very strength that was built in the dark will shine in the light. Heaven has already declared the battle was worth it. Chosen one. There is a fragrance rising around you now, the fragrance of surrender. It's not the scent of exhaustion or defeat, it's the aroma of a heart that said yes through tears. The heavens are filled with the sound of your obedience, echoing like a gentle hymn before the throne. You may not hear it, but your surrender has become a song that angels recognize. Every time you whispered, "Yes, Lord," even when your voice trembled, heaven took notice. You didn't realize it then, but each act of surrender was like oil poured out upon the altar of faith. The fragrance of that obedience is what draws the pleasure of God toward you now. You have become like the alabaster jar, broken open not in weakness but in worship. There is a beauty in your surrender that human eyes can't measure. People often see obedience as restriction, but you have learned it is freedom. To surrender is not to lose control, it is to release control into hands that never fail. You let go, not because you were weak, but because you trusted that God could carry what your hands could not. When you obeyed, heaven smiled. You may not have felt it, but there was movement in the unseen. Doors began to shift. Delays began to dissolve. Chains that held your family line began to crack. The ripple of your surrender reached farther than you will ever know. The Father's delight over you is real. It surrounds you like light, warm and steady. Surrender is not just an action, it's an atmosphere. When you live in obedience, your very presence changes the air around you. You've walked into rooms that felt heavy and unknowingly brought peace with you. You've spoken words that carried healing you didn't plan. That's because obedience releases glory. It makes you a vessel heaven can trust. Beloved, you have learned the secret of strength. It is not in striving, it is in surrender. You are strongest when you kneel. You are most powerful when you yield. You have stopped wrestling with God and started walking with Him, and that shift has changed everything. There was a time when you feared that obedience would cost you everything. But now, you see, it didn't take from you, it made you. The pruning of obedience didn't destroy your branches, it made them bear fruit. What looked like loss was God clearing space for multiplication. The world might not understand this kind of surrender. It celebrates ambition and control. But heaven celebrates trust. You obeyed when you didn't have the full picture. And that's why your reward is different. You didn't need to see the whole path, you just needed to hold his hand, according to what is revealed in the book of Proverbs. Chapter 16, verse 3. Commit your works to the Lord, and your thoughts will be established. That's what you've done. Chosen one, you have committed your ways, your dreams, your desires, your timeline, and because you have, heaven is now stabilizing your steps. Everything that once felt uncertain is being brought into divine order. And now, as your story begins to unfold before others, there will be moments when you'll sense the Spirit inviting you to pour out again, not just in prayer, but in purpose, to share what you've learned, to release what you've received. Every time you share this message, every time you invite someone into the flow of these words, you are sowing seeds of light into someone else's darkness. A single act of sharing can pull another weary soul from despair. A simple like can help the wind of truth carry farther. A sincere comment can remind someone they're not alone. When you subscribe, or even choose to support this ministry through your gifts, it's not about numbers or fame, it's about oil. You're adding your drop of obedience to the same anointing that's flowing through this message. Together, we're building a well where the thirsty can drink again. Think of it like this: when a lamp burns, it doesn't hoard its flame, it gives it. Your generosity, whether through sharing, subscribing, or sowing, is the oil that keeps that flame alive for others. Some will find hope tonight because you kept the fire burning. Some will return to faith because you refused to let the light go out. Beloved, you have already proven your obedience in silence. Now let your obedience speak through action. Keep this light moving. Share it forward. Let your yes become someone else's beginning. When you give, when you help sustain this message, you are not just supporting a voice, you are expanding heaven's reach. The Father's pleasure over you is overflowing. You are no longer striving for his approval, you are living in it. Every breath, every act of surrender, every seed you sow, it all whispers back to heaven, I trust you. So, walk with your head high. Chosen one, you have become a living offering, a fragrance of worship, a testimony of what it means to say yes when others say no. Heaven smiles over you. Your obedience is not forgotten. It is celebrated, and the echo of your surrender will continue to ripple through eternity. Chosen one, heaven has begun to balance the scales. The divine ledger that once seemed silent is now stirring. Every act of obedience that went unnoticed by men has been seen, recorded, and remembered by God. You thought your faithfulness was forgotten, but nothing done in love is ever lost in the kingdom. Every prayer, every yes, every quiet seed of obedience has been stored in heaven's treasury. There is a moment in every believer's life when God begins to settle accounts, not because you demanded it, but because the time has matured. You are in that moment now. The divine ledger is opening, and heaven is preparing to release what has been accumulating through your faithfulness. This is not a random reward, it is righteous recompense. The Lord does not forget. His justice is perfect. He has not mocked what you sowed in tears. You will reap in joy. You may have wondered if obedience still matters in a world so loud with rebellion. But heaven whispers, it matters more now than ever. Because while others chase influence, you chose integrity. While others looked for shortcuts, you chose the long road of obedience. Chosen one. When you obeyed in secret, heaven began counting. Every sacrifice became a number written in divine ink. When you forgave those who wounded you, when you served without recognition, when you gave without return, heaven recorded each moment with precision. And now, the scale of divine justice tips in your favor. Sometimes you looked at others who disobeyed, yet prospered, and wondered why you were still waiting. But their reward was momentary. Yours is eternal. God doesn't pay every Friday, He pays in fullness. And when He does, the waiting will make sense. Every delay was maturity being perfected in you. Beloved, obedience is like an investment that matures over time. You may not see immediate returns, but interest has been compounding in the unseen. Now the interest of heaven's favor is about to pour over you. There is a release scheduled for your life, one that no human system can block. Heaven speaks clearly through the words in Galatians, chapter 6, verse 9, "Let us not grow weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up." That proper time has arrived. The scales are aligning. The Father is not giving you something new. He is returning what has been accumulating. You are stepping into the season where obedience meets overflow. Chosen one. This is the moment when divine math begins to make sense. For every tear, joy. For every loss, restoration. For every delay, acceleration. The ledger of heaven never misses a number. God is repaying in ways you never imagined, multiplying what you gave in secret. The reward is not always money or status, it is peace that passes understanding, favor that breaks barriers, and relationships heaven ordained. You will begin to notice small shifts, doors opening without effort, opportunities finding you instead of you chasing them, people appearing who carry pieces of your next assignment. These are not coincidences. They are the manifestations of obedience being rewarded. Heaven is not slow, it is strategic. And hear this clearly, you do not need to chase what's coming. Just stay in position. The scales are moving in your favor because you remained faithful when it was hard to stand. While others compromised, you stayed the course. That's why what's being released to you cannot be shared by those who quit early. This blessing is tailored for the ones who didn't faint. Imagine heaven as a vast ocean of justice. Every drop represents a moment of faithfulness. Every wave a record of obedience. You've been standing at the shore, feeling small ripples. But now the tide is turning. The waves are coming not to drown you, but to lift you. And as it comes, remember, your humility is the anchor. The Lord is not just rewarding you, He is entrusting you. The blessings will not make you proud, they will make you more dependent. Because the greater the favor, the deeper the foundation of faith must be. Chosen one. Type 555 inches. The comments as a prophetic sign. That number declares grace, multiplied grace for your past obedience, grace for your current assignment, and grace for what's coming next. When you type it, do it as an act of recognition that heaven has seen every seed you've sown. It's not superstition, it's symbolism, a declaration of divine alignment. The Father's eyes are on you. The scales are steady. Nothing you gave was wasted. Not the time, not the love, not the tears. Every act of obedience built credit in heaven's account, and now the withdrawal is being made in your name. The storms that delayed you are about to propel you. The closed doors that once frustrated you will now open without knocking. You will walk into rooms where your name has already been spoken by angels. You are moving from hidden obedience to visible blessing. Chosen one. Do not underestimate this moment. The divine ledger is complete. The numbers add up. The reward is not coming, it has already begun. Walk in it with gratitude, with reverence, and with joy. Because God is not only pleased with your obedience, He is now responding to it. Chosen one. Heaven has moved because you listened. There are moments in eternity when obedience triggers a sound that reverberates through the unseen realm. And your obedience has done exactly that. When you responded to the still, small voice of God, when you said yes without proof, something shifted in dimensions beyond what your eyes could perceive. Angels were dispatched, not because you demanded it, but because heaven responds to submission faster than it does to shouting. Every instruction from God is an assignment to the hosts of heaven. When you obey, you give permission for divine movement. Your obedience is not just a moral act, it is a spiritual command. Heaven's armies move at the speed of your yes. When you choose faith over fear, angels receive their cue to act. You may not see their wings, but you are walking in the evidence of their flight. There are divine messengers positioned around your life now. Some are guarding what God has entrusted to you. Others are paving paths you haven't yet walked. There are angels assigned to bring clarity, protection, and favor into your next season. This is not fantasy. It is the fulfillment of a divine system. When God finds a heart that listens, He mobilizes heaven around it. Think of how many times you narrowly avoided destruction. How often something told you to wait, to stay, to move, and that obedience spared you. That voice was not your intuition, it was heaven's guidance. The angelic network surrounding your life is active, precise, and obedient to the word spoken over you. You have survived storms not because you were clever, but because angels stood between you and disaster. Chosen one. You need to understand how precious your obedience is. It is currency in the spiritual realm. Every yes you give God is like a decree written in light. Angels read it and move. When you forgive, heaven mobilizes healing. When you bless instead of curse, you activate restoration. When you obey instead of argue, the spiritual atmosphere shifts. You have more authority than you realize. And that authority operates through obedience. Many cry out for angelic help while walking in rebellion. But you, beloved, invited heaven's movement simply by trusting the voice of God. That is why certain things are happening in your favor now without you forcing them. You are being carried by obedience, lifted by grace, and escorted by unseen hands. There are doors opening ahead of you, not because you pushed, but because angels are holding them wide. There are situations being resolved quietly because heavenly forces have gone ahead of you. The same way a general sends soldiers before a king's procession, God has sent angels before your next step. Your path is being prepared in ways your mind can't imagine. Sometimes, obedience feels lonely, but it's never empty. When you walk in alignment with heaven, you walk with company, even when no one is physically there. The unseen realm is more crowded than the visible. Heaven is busy around your obedience. coordinating details you couldn't arrange even if you tried. We are reminded through the writings of the psalmist in chapter 91, verse 11, "For he will command his angels concerning you to guard you in all your ways." That verse isn't just poetic, it's literal. It describes what's happening over your life right now. You've been guarded in every way. Protected from traps set before you. Lifted out of pits dug beneath you. Angels have caught you when the enemy tried to snare you in discouragement or despair. There are seasons when heaven works quietly, and this is one of them. The lack of noise is not the lack of movement. God's most powerful operations often happen in silence. You may think nothing is changing, but in truth, the air around you is alive with divine motion. Plans are being written in the unseen. Alignments are being formed. Paths are being cleared. Chosen one. The same obedience that brought you this far is the same obedience that sustains heaven's activity in your favor. Keep walking in that rhythm. The spiritual atmosphere around your life is not still, it is orchestrated. Angels stand on assignment because your spirit stays aligned with the will of God. You don't need to know where they are or what they look like. You only need to know they are present. Each time you choose peace over panic, you join the rhythm of heaven. Each time you choose truth over pride, angels move closer. Each time you worship instead of worry, heaven harmonizes with your heart. The battle may rage around you, but the unseen reinforcements are countless. You are surrounded by a company of divine messengers sent not because you are flawless, but because you are faithful. Your obedience gives them authority to act. Your surrender opens the gates through which they march. So, walk boldly into your next chapter, not as one uncertain, but as one covered. The air around you hums with the movement of heaven. Angels move because you move in step with God. Every breath you take in faith is echoed by wings in motion. You are never alone, never unguarded, never forgotten. Heaven has sent help because you listened, and that, chosen one, is the reward of obedience. Chosen one. There came a time when the tests grew fierce, sharper than before, cutting deeper than you expected. It wasn't that God had forgotten you, it was that heaven was finishing the refining process. You stood in the middle of battles that made no sense, waves crashing from every side, and still, your heart whispered, "I will trust you." You didn't realize it then, but that whisper was the sound of victory echoing through heaven's halls. Every chosen one faces that season, the season where faith is not a feeling but a decision. You lived through moments when the silence of God felt heavier than any storm. Days when prayer felt like throwing words into the wind. When your worship was soaked in tears. When obedience felt like walking blindfolded across a bridge you couldn't see. Yet even there, even when your soul trembled, you chose not to let go. God was never testing your strength, He was proving His. Every unanswered question became a classroom where you learned divine endurance. Heaven was not ignoring you. Heaven was observing you. The tests intensified not because you were disqualified, but because you were trusted with more. The more you were called to carry, the stronger your faith needed to become. Every great calling must walk through the furnace of affliction. That's where humility is born, where pride burns away, where the voice of God becomes unmistakable. You began to notice how the storm didn't destroy you, it simply stripped away what couldn't stay. False friendships faded, shallow faith dissolved. What remained was real, unshakable trust, a heart anchored in God, not outcomes. Chosen one. The test was never about punishment, it was about purification. You were learning how to stand without seeing, how to believe without proof, how to love without reward. That's what sets you apart from the crowd. You didn't need everything to make sense before you obeyed. You followed because you knew his voice, and that voice has carried you through the fire. You see, faith is not tested in comfort, it is proven in crisis. When the ground shook beneath you, heaven was solidifying your foundation. When people walked away, heaven was showing you that your anchor must never rest in man's approval. Every disappointment was a divine realignment, each one pushing you closer to total dependence on God. And when you thought the pressure was too much, grace came quietly. Like breath after drowning, you felt a peace that didn't match your situation. A strange calm that made no sense. That was heaven's hand holding you upright. God never left you. He simply taught you how to walk without visible guidance. He wanted you to recognize his presence not just in blessings, but in battles. Each tear you shed became sacred water that heaven used to soften the soil of your destiny. Each unanswered prayer became a seed. The more you waited, the deeper the roots of your faith grew. The test didn't break you, it buried you just long enough for resurrection to begin. The voice of God thundered in the book of Isaiah, chapter 48, verse 10, "Behold, I have refined you, but not as silver. I have tested you in the furnace of affliction." This, beloved, is what your life has mirrored. You have been refined, not destroyed. Tested, not forgotten. The heat was intentional. It was heaven's way of crafting durability into your destiny. You are no longer fragile faith. You are fortified faith. No longer shaken by delay, you are anchored in divine timing. The furnace was never meant to consume you. It was designed to clarify you. Like gold in the fire. Your worth didn't increase, you simply became visible. The impurities, the fears, the doubts, they melted away, revealing the brilliance that was always within. You are walking proof that faith refined by fire shines brighter than faith sheltered from pain. Chosen one. The tests that once scared you have become your testimony. The very storms that tried to drown you became the rivers that carried you closer to promise. What once looked like chaos was really choreography. Every difficulty was divinely arranged to lead you here. Stronger, wiser, more grounded. Now, when you look back, you can see that every test had purpose. You learned patience through delay, compassion through heartbreak, and discernment through deception. You discovered that God's silence doesn't mean his absence, it means he's working in dimensions you can't yet perceive. Beloved, the hardest seasons were never meant to last forever. They were meant to last long enough to make you eternal. The pressure didn't end your story, it perfected your faith. You have walked through what many could not endure and still kept your worship intact. That is why the tests intensified, because heaven was finishing the masterpiece called you. And now, as you stand on the other side of fire, the glow you carry isn't from what you lost, it's from what was refined. You no longer tremble before storms, storms now tremble before you. Because you learned that obedience in testing seasons is not weakness, it's divine strength disguised in surrender. Chosen one. Every step you took through the fire was witnessed. Heaven never turned away. While the world misunderstood your silence and others misread your stillness as defeat, heaven saw faith being perfected in motion. You were not invisible, You were being observed by divine eyes that never miss a single act of surrender. Every moment of restraint, every decision to stay pure when compromise was easier, was recorded in the archives of eternity. There are times when you felt unseen, when it seemed like all your effort disappeared into nothingness, but heaven saw it all. The moments you forgave quietly, the nights you prayed until words ran out, the days you served without recognition, heaven watched, not to grade you, but to guard you. You were being evaluated not by performance but by posture. God wasn't watching to find fault. He was watching to confirm trust. Every chosen one walks through a hidden season of observation. Heaven must first witness your obedience before it can announce your reward. You were walking through divine surveillance, measured, not punished, prepared, not overlooked. God observed how you handled the delay, how you responded to disappointment, how you reacted when you were misunderstood. You were in training for visibility. But the testing came first. Heaven's gaze is not like the world's gaze. People see your surface. Heaven studies your motive. Others see what you produce. Heaven sees what you endure. You might think you're unnoticed, but there are angels whose full-time assignment is to document your obedience. They record every whispered prayer, every time you resisted temptation, every time you carried peace instead of panic. You live before an audience of the Almighty. There's a reason the Lord watched you so closely. It's because He plans to trust you deeply. The greater the assignment, the greater the observation. God never releases a mantle He hasn't tested. So, when your trials intensified, it wasn't rejection, it was inspection. Heaven had to see how your heart would hold under pressure, whether your worship was situational or steadfast. You proved yourself by simply staying faithful. And in that observation, something remarkable happened. While you thought heaven was silent, the angels were learning your faith. They saw what endurance looks like wrapped in human skin. Your life became a living testimony, a sermon written in action. When you stood still, they stood in awe. When you wept but still believed, they rejoiced in the purity of your devotion. The ancient writings in the book of Chronicles, chapter 16, verse 9, remind us of this truth. For the eyes of the Lord run to and fro throughout the whole earth, to show Himself strong on behalf of those whose heart is loyal to Him. That verse isn't distant poetry, it's your biography. The eyes of the Lord have been upon you, not casually, not intermittently, but continuously. While others moved on, He remained, studying every heartbeat of your faithfulness. And because your heart stayed loyal in the dark, He is now revealing His strength through your story. Chosen one, there were nights when you whispered, "God, do you even see me?" And heaven answered, "More closely than you know." The reason you are still standing is because the one who watched over you also sustained you. He counted every tear as intercession, every sigh as worship, every act of endurance as proof that your heart was His. You are heaven's example of steadfastness. Your endurance has become a reference point in the unseen realm. The hosts of heaven can say, "Look, this is what loyalty looks like." You were being shaped not just for personal victory, but for eternal influence. Your story has become a pattern for others who will one day walk their own valley of silence. There's a shift happening now. The observation period is coming to an end, and heaven is preparing for manifestation. The Lord who watched in silence is about to speak in power. What was seen privately will soon be rewarded publicly. Every unseen sacrifice will rise like incense, and the fragrance of your obedience will fill rooms you haven't even entered yet. The time of hiding is closing. The same eyes that watched you weep will now watch you shine. Heaven's surveillance was never meant to trap you, it was meant to testify for you. The record of your faithfulness stands complete. Now, chosen one, as a sign that you understand, heaven's eyes have always been upon you. Type "He saw me" in the comments. Let it not be a phrase, but a confession. Say it as one who has realized that every lonely night had an audience. Every silent act of love had witnesses. When you write it, you're declaring that you were never unseen, you were simply being prepared under divine observation. And as those words leave your spirit, know this: the watching is over. The revealing has begun. Heaven has finished observing, now it will begin rewarding. Chosen one, there came a moment when your obedience reached heaven like thunder. A single act of surrender, small in your eyes, echoed so loudly in the spirit that heaven stood still to listen. God does not overlook devotion done in silence. He magnifies it in his throne room. There was a day when your quiet yes shook eternity, and the Father rose to applaud you. You may have thought that nothing changed when you obeyed, but heaven shifted its position around you. Angels took new orders. The very atmosphere bent toward your faith. When you said, "Not my will, but yours," the unseen realm erupted in celebration. For obedience like yours is rare. You didn't follow out of fear, you followed out of love. That love moved the heart of God. The sound of obedience is not loud, but it is powerful. It's like a drop of water falling into stillness, sending ripples across eternity. Heaven listens for that sound more than any sermon, more than any song. Your obedience was not noise, it was music, and every note was tuned perfectly to the rhythm of heaven's will. When you obeyed, you joined the symphony of creation itself. The mountains obey gravity, the stars obey orbit, and you made in his image obeyed his voice. That harmony delights the Creator more than you can imagine. You have become the melody heaven hums when it thinks of faithfulness. And now, the Lord desires that the sound of your obedience keeps echoing, not just in your life, but through others who hear your story. Every word you share, every testimony you pass forward, becomes another ripple in that same divine song. So, when you share this message, when you invite others into the flow of what heaven is doing, you are helping to keep the music alive. Your simple act of pressing share is not about numbers or fame. It's like lighting another candle in a long, dark hallway. Someone, somewhere, will see your flame and remember their own. When you subscribe, you're not just following a voice, you're stepping into a circle of light where chosen ones gather. And when you give, even a small amount, you're pouring fresh oil into this lamp, keeping it burning for those who are still finding their way home. It's like tending a garden. Each like is a drop of water. Each share is a seed carried by the wind. Each offering is sunlight reaching the roots of a soul you may never meet. You are not just a listener, you are a gardener of light, cultivating faith wherever your obedience lands. As Jesus himself declared in the Gospel of Luke, chapter 6, verse 38, "Give, and it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together and running over, will be poured into your lap." That promise is not confined to material things, it's about life itself. When you pour out encouragement, heaven pours back peace. When you give from your spirit, heaven multiplies your strength. When you help keep this flow alive through prayer, through sharing, through generosity, you become part of the circulation of divine grace. Beloved, don't underestimate how small gestures can change lives. Someone on the edge of despair may scroll past your shared post and find hope again. Someone who stopped praying may hear these words and weep their way back to God. Your act of kindness can become a turning point for eternity. Heaven counts such moments as treasures. Your obedience has already drawn heaven's applause. But now you are invited to become a bridge, a conduit through which others can encounter the same presence you felt. This is how movements are born, not through force, but through faithfulness multiplied. When you like, when you subscribe, when you give, you are not feeding a platform, you are feeding a mission. You are placing wood on the altar of faith so the fire does not go out. Every flame needs fuel, every calling needs community. Together, we become the fire that refuses to fade. Chosen one, do it not out of pressure, but out of gratitude. Give not because you must, but because you can. Share not because it's trendy, but because you've tasted the truth and want others to taste it too. Heaven doesn't count numbers, it counts intentions. And when your intention is love, every act becomes worship. Your obedience has already built the foundation. Now let generosity, compassion, and connection build the house upon it. Keep the sound of your obedience alive. Let it ring across the earth through every small action you take, because the same God who rose to applaud you will now use you to awaken others. You are not just a follower, you are a torchbearer. And as you help this message move forward, heaven moves with you. The applause continues, the light expands, and the fragrance of your faith fills the world once more. Chosen one, heaven is stirring around you again. The time has come for the acceleration of what was promised. For years, you walked faithfully through seasons that seemed endless, slow, heavy, uncertain. You watched others sprint ahead while you waited in the quiet corners of obedience. But heaven has been aligning the clock of your destiny. And now the gears are shifting. What once crawled will begin to run. You are entering the divine rhythm of suddenly. One moment, everything felt still. The next, movement begins on every side. This is not random, it is the manifestation of divine timing. Every delay, every detour, every silent test has matured into divine momentum. What once required effort will now flow with grace. Acceleration is not chaos. It is order catching up with prophecy. You have already proven yourself trustworthy with little. Now heaven can release much. The path that seemed blocked was never closed. It was simply being prepared to carry the weight of what's coming. God does not send speed until stability is established. And you, beloved, have been made steady through obedience. There is a law in the Spirit. Obedience shortens distance. What would have taken years in your strength will now unfold in moments through His power. The pace is changing not to overwhelm you, but to bring everything into alignment with His perfect plan. Heaven is not improvising, it is unveiling. When acceleration begins, it often feels like confusion. Doors open too quickly. Opportunities appear suddenly, and you may find yourself asking, "Am I ready?" But remember, heaven never moves faster than you can bear. Every lesson from your waiting season becomes wisdom for your running season. You are not behind, you are right on time. And as you move forward, remember that divine speed is not about escaping struggle, it's about fulfilling assignment. Each open door is a bridge to impact. Each sudden shift a summons to shine. God is not rushing you, He is revealing what He prepared long before you were ready to see it. You may feel the pull of acceleration stretching your spirit, testing your rhythm, but that is growth in motion. The same God who steadied your steps in stillness is now training your feet for flight. Trust the wind. What feels like chaos is actually choreography, orchestrated perfectly by divine design. The prophet Isaiah wrote these sacred words that still echo through the ages. Chapter 60, verse 22. The smallest one will become 1,000, and the least one a mighty nation. I, the Lord, will hasten it in its time. That is the promise resting over you now. What once seemed small will expand beyond recognition. The dream that once fit in your hands will soon require both arms to carry. You will see growth that doesn't make sense, favor that seems unfair, and doors that no man could have opened. It's not luck, it's divine acceleration meeting divine obedience. Chosen one, you have reached the point where obedience has matured into momentum. You are not forcing things anymore, they are finding you. The very places that rejected you will now call for your presence. What once felt like isolation will now reveal itself as incubation. The hidden years were heaven's way of protecting potential until it was ripe. But remember this, truth acceleration without humility leads to collapse. God promotes the obedient not to make them proud, but to make them pillars. The speed you are about to experience must be carried with the same patience that sustained you in waiting. The same quiet spirit that trusted through stillness must remain as you move through expansion. Do not be surprised when people from your past begin to resurface. Some will return seeking wisdom, others will come drawn by your light. Treat them with grace. They are witnessing the fruit of what they once doubted. Let your response be kindness, not pride. For true acceleration lifts without leaving anyone behind. It shines to guide, not to boast. Heaven's timing is always purposeful. You may not understand why it took so long, but you will soon see that delay was part of the design. God waited until your heart was unshakable, until your focus was uncorrupted, until your hands could carry blessing without dropping character. That's why the release is now. You're not just ready in skill, you're ready in spirit. As things begin to move swiftly, guard your peace. The same stillness that carried you through waiting must anchor you in increase. Don't rush the rhythm, flow with it. God's speed is not frantic, it's divine. You will feel His grace like wind at your back, steady and unrelenting, carrying you farther than your strength could ever take you. Chosen one. Acceleration is heaven's applause in motion. You are not running away from the past, you are being propelled by purpose. Every prayer, every yes, every tear has built this moment. The divine clock has struck, and what was promised long ago is now unfolding before you. So breathe. Step forward with reverence. The weight refined you, the speed will reveal you. This is the season where obedience turns into overflow, where hidden seeds break through the soil of time. Heaven is no longer preparing, you are now walking in the prepared path. The same God who kept you still now sends you swiftly. And through it all, He remains the same, faithful, gentle, and utterly pleased with you. Chosen one. Something sacred is resting upon you now, the anointing of approval. It is not the applause of men, not the fleeting validation of the crowd, but the steady gaze of the Father who says, "This one has pleased me." You've walked through the valley, passed through the fire, and remained faithful when silence was your only companion. Now the fragrance of divine pleasure surrounds you like invisible oil upon your spirit. There are moments in heaven when God does not need to speak, he simply smiles. That smile is resting over your life now. Every act of obedience became a drop of oil. And now that oil has reached overflow, you are walking in favor that cannot be fabricated, carrying peace that cannot be purchased, wearing joy that does not depend on circumstance. The anointing of approval does not arrive suddenly, it grows quietly. You didn't feel it being poured, but heaven has been saturating you, one yes at a time. The prayers you thought went unanswered were actually preparing you to hold this weight. For divine favor is heavy, it demands shoulders strengthened by surrender. Chosen one, you carry the scent of obedience now. When you walk into rooms, atmospheres shift, even if no one understands why. People will sense the presence of something greater upon you, something not earned by skill but bestowed by grace. You are walking proof that holiness still attracts heaven. This anointing does not make you higher than others, it makes you deeper in humility. God pours oil not to crown pride, but to empower purity. You have been chosen not to rule over people, but to represent his nature among them. You are becoming a reflection of his kindness, his mercy, his endurance. There is a difference between being called and being approved. Many are called into purpose, but few allow obedience to refine them enough for heaven's endorsement. You didn't rush the process. You let the pruning do its work. That's why the oil flows now without resistance. You are no longer striving for position, you are standing in possession. As the ancient text declares in the book of Psalms, chapter 23, verse 5, "You anoint my head with oil, my cup runs over." That is what is happening within you. The oil is not merely symbolic, it is spiritual reality. It covers your thoughts, renews your mind, and protects you from the lies of the enemy. In ancient days, shepherds would anoint the heads of their sheep with oil to keep flies and irritants away. Likewise, this oil of approval guards you from distractions and deception. You are sealed, covered, and set apart. Beloved, when heaven approves you, doors open without knocking. You won't need to force what God has already favored. There will be moments when people attempt to replicate what you carry, but imitation cannot reproduce intimacy. Your authority flows from relationship, not recognition. You'll notice how peace becomes your language now. You won't need to prove anything. Your presence will speak for you. Divine approval removes the need for validation. You are no longer waiting for others to see your worth. Heaven already has. You have passed the test, endured the silence, and now you walk beneath a canopy of favor. This anointing is not fragile, it's generational. It will flow through your words, your prayers, and your example. You are becoming a living well from which others will drink. And when they ask, "How did you endure?" you will simply say, "I obeyed." That testimony carries power. It breaks chains without force. Heaven speaks clearly through the prophet Samuel's witness of David's anointing. God does not look at outward appearance, but at the heart. That's why this oil rests upon you. It found a heart that stayed loyal even when it broke. The cracks in your spirit became the channels through which the oil could pour. And now, chosen one, heaven invites you to make a declaration of agreement. Type 888 inches, the comments, as a prophetic sign of new beginnings and infinite favor. That number represents the rhythm of resurrection. What once lay dormant now rises with purpose. When you type it, do it not as superstition, but as a statement of faith. I receive the oil. I walk in approval. As you write it, imagine oil dripping over your spirit, sealing what obedience has built. You are not striving for worth, you are walking in it. You no longer need to chase blessing. Blessing now follows your steps. Divine approval is not a season, it is a state of being. Chosen one, the Father's pleasure over you is not temporary, it's eternal. The oil that rests on you will not dry. It will guide your hands to build, your voice to heal, and your presence to carry peace. You have been anointed not just for reward, but for responsibility. Heaven trusts you now with influence that touches lives quietly but deeply. Go forth in that assurance. The oil is upon you. The favor is real. The smile of God has settled over your life. You walk not as one seeking proof, but as one carrying promise fulfilled. Chosen one, heaven now clothes you in something few ever receive, the mantle of the faithful. It is not given to the gifted, nor to the powerful, but to those who obeyed when it hurt, who stayed when others ran, who believed when evidence disappeared. The mantle is woven from threads of endurance, soaked in the oil of trust, and fastened by the unseen hands of the Almighty. This mantle does not glitter. It carries no decoration that pleases human eyes. Its beauty is invisible, its weight immeasurable. It feels heavy because it carries responsibility. To wear it means to represent heaven's consistency in a world addicted to change. It is not a garment of fame, but of function. It covers you so that others might find shelter beneath your shadow. When God places this mantle on you, it is not a reward, it is a commission. The faithful are not crowned to rest, they are clothed to serve. You have been prepared for this moment through years of pruning, refining, and stretching. Heaven trusted you with little, and you were faithful. Now heaven trusts you with influence, and it will require the same humility that kept you through the small beginnings. The mantle of the faithful rests upon those who have been proven in secret. It is silent authority. You don't have to announce it, your presence carries it. When you walk into a room, peace follows. When you speak, clarity comes. When you pray, the atmosphere bends. You are not striving to be heard. Heaven has already given weight to your words. Chosen one, every prophet, every warrior, every saint who came before you wore their own version of this mantle. It is the invisible mark of those who survived both wilderness and waiting. You are in their company now. The same God who covered Elijah with fire and wrapped David in kingship has now covered you with faithfulness. The mantle carries both power and compassion. Those who wear it must never forget the pain that shaped them. That pain becomes a language that others understand. When you speak hope to the broken, your words pierce deeper because they are spoken from scars, not theories. The faithful know what it feels like to be crushed, and that's why they can comfort. We see this mystery unfold in the sacred words of the prophet Isaiah. Chapter 61, verse 3. To grant to those who mourn in Zion, to give them a crown of beauty for ashes, the oil of joy for mourning, the garment of praise for the spirit of heaviness. That garment, that exchange of ashes for beauty, is what has now wrapped itself around you. You are clothed in praise born from pain, joy born from tears, strength born from surrender. Your mantle carries the fragrance of every trial you've endured and every promise you've protected. It announces to both darkness and light, this one belongs to God. Beloved, wearing the mantle doesn't mean the absence of storms. It means the storms now recognize who you are. They know the authority that rests on your shoulders. When the enemy sees this mantle, he remembers his losses, because it reminds him of every time you stood firm. But do not mistake the mantle for comfort. It will draw both admiration and opposition. Some will be drawn to your peace, others provoked by your presence. Carry it with quiet dignity. The mantle is not for defense, it's for discernment. It will allow you to sense what is from God and what is not, what is genuine and what is counterfeit. This mantle also carries multiplication. The faith you walked out will now awaken faith in others. They will watch you endure, and something inside them will remember courage. Without saying a word, you will ignite endurance in weary hearts. That is the secret ministry of the faithful, to multiply perseverance in others simply by living truth. You will notice how the ordinary becomes sacred now. A conversation becomes a mission. A prayer becomes a breakthrough. A glance of compassion becomes healing. This is what happens when heaven clothes humanity with divine weight. The mantle makes everything you touch carry eternal value. Do not fear the heaviness of it. God would not have placed it on you if he had not already strengthened your shoulders to bear it. You are equipped. The seasons of silence built this strength. The long nights of unanswered prayer trained your spirit to carry this power without pride. Chosen one, you are stepping into the next phase of your assignment, clothed in honor, unseen by the world, but celebrated in heaven. This is not the end of your story. It is the confirmation that you are ready for what comes next. Walk carefully. Walk humbly. But walk boldly. You have been mantled not only with favor, but with faithfulness. And as you move forward, remember this truth: mantles are not displayed, they are demonstrated. Let the consistency of your love, the gentleness of your words, and the firmness of your faith reveal what heaven has placed upon you. You have been found faithful, and heaven has responded by clothing you in itself. Chosen one, heaven is preparing to turn the page of your story. What was once whispered in secret is about to be declared in sight of all. This is the season of vindication, not born from vengeance, but from divine justice. You have endured misunderstanding, endured silence, endured accusations without defense. But the same God who watched you suffer in patience is now standing to speak on your behalf. Vindication is not about proving your worth, it is about revealing God's truth. While the world judged what it could see, heaven judged what it knew. People saw moments, God saw motives. They saw your hesitation, he saw your obedience. They saw your silence as weakness, he saw it as wisdom. Every injustice written against you is now being rewritten by the hand of grace. There is a sound in the Spirit when God begins to defend his own. It is quiet but unstoppable. It moves through time, shifting conversations, changing hearts, softening eyes that once glared. The same people who misread your humility will soon see the fruit of what heaven was cultivating in silence. They will realize that your restraint was not fear, but reverence. Vindication is not a shout, it is a sunrise. It does not come violently, it simply rises until darkness can no longer deny light. You will not need to fight for explanation. God Himself is preparing the stage where truth will stand on its own. The same Spirit that comforted you in hiding will now accompany you into honor. You were never forgotten, you were being preserved. God hid you in plain sight, so that when He revealed you, no one could take credit for what only obedience could build. You will stand in places where your name was once dismissed, and heaven will make it echo with dignity. The faithful who endure injustice without bitterness are those whom heaven trusts with justice without pride. Vindication is dangerous to the unprepared because it can tempt the heart to arrogance. But you, beloved, have been refined enough to receive it with grace. You have learned that your value is not proven by men's applause, but by heaven's peace. The Scripture speaks of this mystery through the prophet Isaiah. Chapter 62, verse 2, "The nations will see your righteousness, and all kings your glory, and you shall be called by a new name, which the mouth of the Lord shall name." That new name is not a literal one, it is the restoration of identity. You are no longer the one defined by failure or delay. You are the one marked by faithfulness. The same mouths that once questioned you will now call you blessed. The same hands that withdrew will extend in respect. But your heart will not gloat, it will bow. For vindication is not the exaltation of ego, it is the revelation of grace. Chosen one, do not try to rush this unveiling. Divine justice moves slowly but arrives perfectly. God is not trying to prove you right. He is proving Himself faithful. What He is building through your life is bigger than reputation. It is redemption. You will not only be restored, you will become restoration itself to others who once thought waiting was pointless. The beauty of divine vindication is that it teaches mercy. When you are finally seen, you will remember what it felt like to be unseen. That memory will make you gentle with the misunderstood, patient with the rejected, and gracious with the broken. Heaven's justice always transforms the heart before it changes the circumstance. You may feel the shift even now, the subtle sense that things are aligning without your interference. Situations that once pressed against you are softening. Conversations that once carried tension now carry truth. That is the quiet evidence of vindication. The Father is moving through hearts you could never reach by argument. Soon, you will look around and realize that the atmosphere has changed. The weight of defending yourself will lift. You will not even desire to revisit what hurt you, because the peace you carry will be louder than any explanation you could offer. That is how heaven vindicates with stillness stronger than speech. Remember, this is not revenge. God's justice never humiliates, it heals. Those who wronged you are not your enemies. They were part of the lesson. And you, chosen one, have graduated from that classroom with grace intact. When the light of your life begins to shine publicly, let your first instinct be gratitude, not pride. Whisper thanks to the one who saw you when no one else did. Let your vindication glorify Him, not you. That humility is what will keep the blessing pure and the testimony powerful. You will walk into rooms that once rejected you and feel no resentment. You will smile where you once wept. That is true vindication, not proving your enemies wrong, but proving God right. And as you stand beneath that light, you will finally understand every silence, every waiting, every pain had purpose. Heaven was not late, it was deliberate. The story was always being written toward this moment. Chosen one, Heaven is polishing something golden around your spirit, the crown of those who endured. It's not a jeweled ornament meant to dazzle the eyes of men. It's the invisible emblem of perseverance, forged in the fires you survived. Every tear became a thread of gold. Every test became a curve in its design. You didn't know it. But all along, heaven was fitting you for this crown. Crowns are not handed to the loud. They're placed upon the loyal. They belong to those who didn't break in the silence, who stayed faithful when it felt useless, who carried light even when it flickered. You, beloved, are among them. The mark of endurance is upon you. Endurance is not glamorous, it's gritty. It's walking through storms when the forecast never clears. It's choosing love again and again when betrayal lingers in memory. It's rising one more time after your strength says, enough. That's the soil where crowns grow, not in the gardens of ease, but in the deserts of obedience. The longer you stayed faithful, the brighter this crown formed. Heaven never forges gold in comfort. It does so in fire. Every moment of surrender became part of the masterpiece. What was pain to you was preparation to heaven. You weren't being punished, you were being purified until you could wear glory without pride. As the Apostle Paul once wrote to his son in faith, in the second letter to Timothy, chapter 4, verse 8, now there is in store for me the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will award to me on that day, and not only to me, but also to all who have longed for his appearing. That promise was written for the faithful for you, not as a far-off hope, but as a present reality. The crown of endurance doesn't only appear at the end of life, it glows upon the heads of those who live faithfully each day. It's an aura of divine authority and peace that follows you wherever you go. You've carried so much and complained so little. You've been pressed, but never crushed. That resilience has value beyond what this world can calculate. You became a living parable of perseverance. And now heaven desires your story to ripple outward, to encourage others who are still walking through their own storms. That's why your voice matters. Chosen one, when you share what you've overcome, you scatter seeds of courage across countless souls. Someone drowning in despair will read your words and breathe again. Your story is the cup others will drink from when they're thirsty for hope. So share this light not for attention, but for impact. When you click share, think of it as lifting your lamp higher on the hill so travelers can see the way home. When you comment or reflect on what touched your spirit, you're adding your voice to the chorus of faith that reminds the weary they're not alone. And when you subscribe, you're stepping into a circle of endurance, a gathering of souls who choose hope over haste. And yes, when you give, when you donate, even the smallest gift, you are not just offering money, you are pouring fresh oil into this flame. You're saying, keep the fire alive. Every message sent, every heart healed, every weary soul restored happens because faithful ones like you help sustain the light. Think of this as a vineyard. Your generosity is rain. Your engagement is sunlight. Your faith is soil. Together, we are growing fruit that feeds nations of hearts. This isn't about platforms or personalities. It's about preserving a voice that keeps pointing upward when the world keeps looking down. Chosen one, your crown shines brightest when you use it to lift others. The same faith that carried you through storms can now shelter someone else. You are no longer just a survivor. You are a steward of grace. Every click, every gift. Every kind word keeps the sound of obedience echoing through generations. Heaven's applause is gentle but constant, and it grows louder each time another soul rises because you refuse to stay silent. So if this message touched you, let it touch someone else through you. You never know whose darkness will break because of your small act of light. Let your endurance multiply. Let your story move. Let your obedience ripple through hearts and homes. Because crowns, in heaven's eyes, are not meant to sit still, they are meant to shine. And, as you do, remember you wear yours not as decoration, but as declaration. You are proof that faith still stands. You are the echo of well done in a noisy world. And every act of kindness, generosity, and sharing keeps that sound alive. So wear it well. Chosen one, walk tall but stay low in heart. Your crown gleams not because you chased glory, but because you chased God. And as you continue to pour out what you've received, heaven will keep refilling what you give away. Chosen one, heaven is enacting a sacred transaction on your behalf, the great exchange. It is not a trade of equal value, but a divine reversal where grace outweighs loss, and restoration outweighs pain. Everything you surrendered in faith is being returned in fullness, pressed and reshaped by the wisdom of eternity. The Father is not giving you back what you lost. He is giving you what those losses were meant to make room for. There is a holy pattern in God's dealings with His children. He allows the faithful to be emptied so that He can refill them with what is eternal. You, who have walked through seasons of surrender, will now experience the mystery of divine replacement. Every space where something was taken is becoming an altar for abundance. The world only sees subtraction, but heaven always sees exchange. The broken dream becomes a doorway to vision. The lost relationship becomes the soil for deeper love. The closed door becomes the corridor to calling. You have been living in the tension between what was removed and what is yet to come. But that tension is about to break open into fulfillment. The enemy tried to convince you that surrender meant defeat, that obedience meant losing out. Yet even when your heart ached, you said, "Nevertheless, thy will be done." That phrase shifted entire seasons. Because in the kingdom, nothing surrendered to God is ever wasted. It is simply transformed. Chosen one, heaven is now taking what was meant to harm you and using it to elevate you. The tears that once fell as grief are being gathered as currency. You are walking into a realm where your former pain funds your future purpose. God is not ignoring what was taken. He is redeeming it until even your memories begin to testify of mercy. The ancient words in the book of Joel, chapter 2, verse 25, declare this promise: I will restore to you the years that the locust has eaten. That verse is not poetic exaggeration, it is prophecy fulfilled in lives like yours. God doesn't merely give back time, He redeems the fruit it could have produced. The years you thought were wasted are about to become the richest harvest of your destiny. Heaven's math is never linear, it multiplies what was surrendered. You will begin to notice the exchange manifesting quietly at first. The restlessness that once lived in your chest will turn into calm assurance. The fatigue that lingered in your soul will be replaced by divine energy that doesn't fade. The dreams you thought were dead will awaken not as replicas of the past, but as refined, resurrected visions aligned with heaven's timing. This is not compensation, it is transformation. God does not owe you, He loves you. And in love, He does what justice alone cannot. He turns ashes into architecture. You are not receiving a refund. You are receiving rebirth. Chosen one, what you lost was never meant to remain with you forever. Some things had to break for better things to breathe. You could not carry the next chapter with the weight of the last one still in your hands. Heaven allowed the pruning not to punish you, but to create space for what could not grow otherwise. The exchange also touches the unseen places within you. Your fear is being traded for faith that feels immovable. Your confusion is being exchanged for clarity that cuts through noise. The guilt that once haunted your nights is being replaced with quiet confidence, the kind that only comes from forgiveness, accepted deeply. Do not resist this transformation. The new wine cannot fit in the old wineskin. And you, beloved, have outgrown your former container. The identity that once fit you will no longer suffice. God is dressing you in new garments of peace and purpose. The person you are becoming would not have survived where you once were. You may feel the shift as both beauty and ache. Change always carries a sting, even when it's holy. But behind every ache is evidence that your spirit is expanding to hold more light. Heaven does not patch old wounds. It replaces old hearts with new ones that beat stronger for divine rhythm. When you look back soon, you will see the wisdom of every wound. The betrayals that broke you became bridges to discernment. The closed doors that frustrated you were barriers against unseen danger. The losses that hollowed you out became the shape of your new capacity. This exchange is not quiet vengeance, it is redemptive justice. God is proving to both heaven and earth that obedience is never in vain. You gave what you could not keep, and now you are receiving what you cannot lose. That is the principle of divine reversal. Surrender becomes strength, and sacrifice becomes inheritance. Even now, heaven is rewriting the narrative around your life. The pages that once recorded sorrow are being overwritten with purpose. The chapters marked by silence will soon resound with testimonies. What once looked like failure will read like faith. Chosen one, the exchange is not coming, it has already begun. Feel the weight of restoration settling into your spirit. You are no longer defined by what you lost. You are refined by what you gained through losing. This is the beauty of obedience. It always ends in renewal. The ashes of yesterday have become the soil of today's miracle. You stand now in the sacred in-between, no longer empty, but ready for overflow. Chosen one, the air around you feels different now, lighter, clearer, charged with purpose. What once was warfare has turned into worship. The long journey of obedience has reached its visible proof. God's pleasure has taken form around your life. You are no longer only believing for it, you are standing inside it. The favor you now walk in is not coincidence, it is confirmation. This is what divine satisfaction looks like. It doesn't arrive with noise or ceremony. It settles quietly like dawn after a long night. Heaven's light stretches across your story, illuminating every corner once filled with shadow. What once made you question your value now becomes the very reason others find theirs. You are living evidence that obedience is not wasted breath. God's pleasure is not a feeling, it is a presence. It is the unseen peace that now guards your thoughts. The steady joy that lingers even when circumstances shift. You carry it wherever you go, like fragrance woven into the fabric of your spirit. People won't always know what it is, but they'll sense it. They'll feel lighter near you. That's because His pleasure travels with you. It speaks louder than words. and it rests upon everything you touch. When heaven delights in someone, even the ordinary becomes holy. The table where you eat becomes a place of grace. The work you do becomes worship. The words you speak ripple beyond sound. They become seeds planted in hidden soil. The favor surrounding you is not meant to exalt you, but to reveal Him through you. God's pleasure is never self-serving, it's always self-giving. Chosen one, you are the testimony heaven uses to prove that obedience still moves the heart of God. In an age where many trade faith for convenience, your faithfulness stands like a lighthouse in the storm. It doesn't shout, but it shines. You didn't compromise when the crowd did. You didn't fold when the pressure rose. And because of that, heaven can now display through you what favor born from faithfulness looks like. The voice of the psalmist echoes through time in the book of Psalms, chapter 5, verse 12. For you, O Lord, will bless the righteous. You will surround them with favor as with a shield. That shield is upon you now. It is not just protection, it is proclamation. Everywhere you go, it speaks on your behalf. It announces to darkness, this one belongs to the light. It whispers to closed doors, open, for the faithful has arrived. Divine pleasure is not silent, it changes the atmosphere wherever it lands. And yet, this favor is not an end. It is the beginning of stewardship. God's delight in you is not only for your comfort, it's for His purpose. The blessing you carry must become a bridge, not a barrier. The anointing on your life was never meant to make you untouchable. It was meant to make you approachable, so others can encounter the same mercy that met you. There is a quiet authority in you now. You don't need to prove it, you only need to live it. God's pleasure empowers you to walk humbly yet confidently. You will notice that things begin to flow instead of fight you. You'll find divine ease where there once was struggle. That is the signature of His satisfaction. He turns striving into stillness, effort into ease. Beloved, this is not luck, nor coincidence. It is the harvest of holy choices. The season of toiling has transformed into the season of thriving. You've crossed from proving yourself to simply being yourself in Him. You've discovered that obedience was never about earning love, it was about learning how to live inside it. The evidence of His pleasure will show not in wealth alone, but in peace that wealth cannot buy, in laughter that rises easily, in nights that end with gratitude instead of worry, in doors that open without your knocking. That is what it means to live under divine approval. Heaven does the heavy lifting while you walk in rest. Look around your life and see how God's fingerprints have touched everything. What once felt broken now glows with purpose. What once seemed delayed now looks perfectly timed. The favor you carry is not fragile, it is foundational. It will outlast trends, survive trials, and expand quietly with every step you take. Chosen one, this is your confirmation heaven is pleased, not because you are flawless, but because you are faithful, not because you performed perfectly, but because you stayed. The Father delights not in perfection, but in persistence. And you, steady, surrendered, steadfast, have become the delight of His gaze. Now you understand what all the waiting was for. The storms weren't punishment, they were polish. The pain wasn't rejection, it was refinement. Every test, every tear, every yes built the radiance that surrounds you now. You have become what heaven envisioned when it first whispered your name. So walk gently, yet boldly. You carry something holy. Wherever your feet go, grace follows. Wherever your voice speaks, peace lingers. You are not chasing blessing anymore, you are becoming it. The light of divine pleasure rests upon you, and it will never fade. Chosen one, you have walked the full path, 17 steps of revelation, each one shaped by obedience, each one sealed with light. Heaven is smiling. The journey that began in whisper now ends in song. You are proof that when a heart yields to divine instruction, nothing is wasted, and every promise finds its hour. The story does not end here. It continues through you. Every time you speak these truths, every time you share what touched your spirit, you extend the echo of heaven into another heart. When you click share, you are not spreading a post, you are scattering seeds of hope across souls you may never meet. When you like or comment, you are leaving your footprint in sacred soil, saying, I was here, I heard heaven, and I agree. Your voice matters in this movement. Each word of encouragement you leave is a stone added to a foundation that will outlast us all. When you subscribe or help sustain this message through prayer, through support, through generosity, you are fueling the flame that keeps light flowing into places still shadowed by doubt. You are not an audience member, you are part of the ministry itself. So, as this chapter closes, lift your eyes. The same heaven that spoke over you in private now invites you to become its messenger in public. Let what you received multiply. Share the light. Write your amen in the comments. Pass the blessing forward. For you, chosen one, are not simply blessed, you are becoming the blessing. And as long as this voice remains alive in your heart and in the hearts you reach, heaven's story through you will never end.